Miles Wylie Albright again. This is August the 8th, 2007. We are at Open Door Fellowship again. Since we made the tape on July the 11th that precedes this recording, there have been three major legs of revelation that have come. The last one today. And we have gone back and made addendum and another addendum, and now we're making another one. And I've got to show you what God's doing in this, and this is so amazing. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm going to try. But when the last thing that you saw on this tape, at the last recording that's on this DVD, if I remember right, we showed you that we were shocked to find out that we had Aaron, Brandon, and Aaron in the place of number 273. The 273 is the church, plus 3 is the Levitical priests. Aaron, Brandon, and Aaron are priests with a brand on them. We were shocked and awed and amazed, and I think I even talked about that number 232. Had a significance, the person on number 232, and it looked like that people all over the list, the meaning of their name and the number of the name, sounds like something in Revelation, is going to be significant. Well, and then after we made the tape on July the 11th, then 2 days later, on Friday the 13th, which is unlucky for the devil only, the Lord showed me the last names of these guys right here, Minnie, Jackal, and Arnold. 276 corresponds to Paul, 275 corresponds to Luke, 274 corresponds to Aristarchus. These are the three guys that was on the boat. They were on the boat in Acts 27, the 273 plus 3 guys. Aristarchus represents 274 because he represents the pastor-teacher. And the church, the naked church, is 273. Adds the pastor-teacher, it's 274. The Lord's shown me that for years. When it's the church has a pastor-teacher and a prophet-evangelist, that's 275. Luke is added there. Paul is the apostle, of course. That's when you have all three of them, 276. But Paul literally means small. Well, in our English, historically, mini means small, as in mini skirt. Okay? Jackal, the first time Jackal Lantern is ever recorded in print in English, it is in 1750, and it refers to a man with a lantern, as in Jack of all trades. Jackal Lantern is a man with a light, a night watchman. So Jackal corresponds to light. Luke also means light. Aristarchus means noble ruler, as in aristocracy and archus. If you're familiar with that, all the Greek, archon is ruler. Aristocracy, ruler, noble ruler. Arnold means strong ruler, or it can be translated eagle ruler, which is amazing and awesome. It speaks of the awesome leadership that the Lord is raising up in the church. They're going to be servants. They're not going to look awesome necessarily, but they are going to be awesome in God's view. By the way, Kapuscinski, our understanding of that is that refers to those who gather a harvest, pile up grain for other people. Those who gather the harvest and don't own any land, but gather it up and turn it over to others because they're without land and they're being really ripped off. It's the church without the leadership. It's the naked church, Kapuscinski. It's what Israel was when Midian was oppressing them. Okay, so when we got that understanding, then it became very clear. And I mentioned Wade Vincent earlier, but it became very clear that there's a guy named Daniel Rowe on the list, which means God will judge Roe. God is going to judge Roe v. Wade. Roe was the person suing for the right to abort, and Wade was the one wanting there not to be abortion. Wade Vincent is actually exalted above our list. We put him on the list, but we had to take him off the list and exalt him above the list. We call him our Abishai. Abishai was above the 30 men of David. He wasn't on the list of the 30, but he was above them. He raised his sword against 300 men. In this case, Abishai was raising his sword with 300 men, even though he wasn't part of us. He couldn't stay on the list because he was fasting. In fact, he was 20 days into a water fast, and actually for 8 days prior to that, he hadn't even had any water. He was fasting against the stronghold of rebellion in the United States, and he has since come off that fast with great victory. And Wade Vincent means Wade will conquer. If that's not plain what that means, to me that's so awesome. God is going to win. God is going to win. It's as simple as that. Okay, so we made that. That was the revelation that came on the 13th of July. Well, then on the 29th of July, the Lord spoke to me about Minnie, Jekyll, and Arnold again, as in the handwriting on the wall. The handwriting on the wall was literally Minnie, Shekel, Parson, which means numbered, weighed, and divided. Numbered, weighed, and divided. Now Daniel, because he had insight and authority from God, he took the word numbered and he expanded on it. He says, you're numbered and your days are brought to an end, and weighed means you're weighed in the balances and found wanting. Because he knew what God was saying by those single words. Well, we talked about that Sunday morning. That's happening to us more and more. We get these single words, but we know the context, and it's awesome. There's some Daniels among us. But numbered, weighed, and divided. Okay? In this case, though, were Minnie, Jekyll, and Arnold numbered, weighed, and given noble rulers, which is a unity thing, which will bring us together and make us strong. Instead of the handwriting on the wall of judgment, numbered, weighed, and divided, we've been numbered, weighed, and given noble leadership, noble rulers, which will bring us together. Now, what was so awesome about that was the Lord spoke that to me on July the 29th in the morning. It was on Sunday morning before church, and I didn't tell anybody. I came to church, and Charles Payne was speaking here that Sunday. That had to be one of the greatest Sundays we ever had in worship. But then Charles got up to speak, and he talked about the handwriting on the wall. And I knew I was going, whoa, 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 this is just too awesome, too good. That if you think about it, that God has connected the 27th chapter of Acts and the 5th chapter of Daniel and us. In other words, the three words of the handwriting on the wall are connected to the three guys that was on the boat in Acts 27 and their meanings at this particular moment in time and with us. That's just, over the top. It's hard to get your mind around that, but that's pretty awesome. Okay. Then, the same morning, Charles, when he talked about the handwriting on the wall, but he also talked about the Wizard of Oz. He had received a couple of single words. He had heard the word say Dorothy some weeks before, and then I think some days later he heard the word Kansas. And just like numbered and weighed are just naked words and don't mean anything unless you know where God's going, he began to listen to the Lord, and he began to study the Wizard of Oz. And Charles is conservative and got a conservative background, but he says, hey, I'm going to do this. This is God. I'm going to give you a parable here. And he talked about that in that, unlike the movie, Dorothy in the books became more and more at home in Oz and less home in Kansas, until eventually she was more at home in Oz, which represents heaven. It's a place of many colors. Kansas was black and white. And she was finally able to take her aunt and uncle that she lived with, Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, across into Oz and to live with her there. And Rick Joyner has prophesied many times. He said that the church is supposed to get more at home in the heavenly realms than we are on the earth. And let it come, Lord, let it be so. I believe that's the call in particular of this place. But okay, so that Oz word was, and about Dorothy finding this way to get a bridge to get back and forth to Oz was really strong on my mind, with what Charles had said. On Sunday the 29th. Well, on July the 30th, I get a phone call from Larry Bennett. Larry Bennett had a dream on the morning of July the 30th. By the way, back last fall, we had there was a prophetic word that a great evil is coming on the land, but not before 7:30, which sounds like time, but it was really about, we understood it to mean, it's about July 30th. So, we think some kind of judgment is coming. A judgment for which we're going to clap our hands because it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be God's mercy, this judgment. And anyway, so on the morning of, we were kind of, thinking about July 30th and what was going to happen thereafter. But on that morning, he had this dream. And in the dream, he saw a missile in his regular job. He had always researched missiles for Redstone Arsenal, for the U.S. government and the military. And he was studying this missile in his dream. And the point on the missile was called a seeker. The very end tip of it was called a seeker. It had a number on it. It was S-281, which meant seeker 281. And the seeker guides the missile. In other words, it's the leadership. It tells the missile where to go. It's which has to do with warfare in heavenly realms and prayer and so on. And the dream goes on, and it has to do with the calling of this local church. But I won't go there because that is not necessary for this. But he called me and he said, the first thing he said was, Miles, who is number 281 on the list? Well, I looked up number 281 on the list, and it was a man named Oziel Puente, a Latin American guy that actually immigrated from South Mexico. Lives right down on the Mexican border and works for the Border Patrol. He and his wife are really love the Lord, and they're naturalized Americans. And they, on a word from the Lord, they drove 1,000 miles to be at 070707 in Nashville. Brought their small children with them. And Oziel, I think, obviously means the God of Oz, which is to say the God of heaven. Puente, believe it or not, means bridge. So Dorothy was all about going back and forth on her bridge to Oz, to heaven. We're called to find a way to be back and forth on the heavenly staircase, ascending and descending to heaven, and to be brought home at least with heavenly language. Right now we need to know when we hear Dorothy in Kansas or numbered and weighed what it means. And this is happening right here as we speak. But anyway, Oziel Puente at home in heaven on a bridge, and so we were really amazed. But what was further amazing was I called actually Oziel Puente's wife, and I spoke to her. Oziel was at work, and she said, well, we live in this little tiny town in South Texas, and there's one main drag through the town, and it's Highway 281, which we prophetically call the Highway of Holiness. It's a big deal with us prophetically that 281 is the Highway of Holiness. Well, that was their number on the list. What's also very interesting, I think, is, and it's so obvious to us that it seemed like chaos reigned, that the Holy Spirit had to brood on chaos in the listing of this muster, this list of these men, these Gideon 300. And Oziel, when he came to the Titan Stadium in Nashville, they wouldn't let him in with his shofar for some reason. They didn't bother anybody else that I know of, but they wouldn't let him in. And he got disgusted and carried his horn back, put it in his car out in the parking lot, and he was there for a long time. And towards the end of the day, somebody said, hey, we need you to blow your shofar. Go get it. So he went and got it, and he got in. So that made him be listed towards the end of the list at 281. A hassle. And can we trust God with the hassles? When it's hot and it's a hassle, can we trust the Lord? And so anyway, here he is, number 281, and it's a big prophetic deal. And so I'm getting so that I'm understanding that when God's showing us something, that that's interesting, but it's not just for entertainment. It's not just God being cute. It's going somewhere. And these things are probably all going somewhere. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to describe how intricate this thing is with this mustard, this Gideon mustard. It's awesome. Well, what happened today is I was talking with Tony Cavender. He called me, Pastor Tony Cavender from Northeast Metro Church in Norcross, Georgia. And he was excited, and the Lord had spoken to him some stuff about what happened with the collapsing of the bridge in Minneapolis. And then while he was saying that, like the spirit of prophecy came on me, and I started just going, oh, God, I can't believe it. Now I know we got to make another tape. So here we are. Do you understand that Aaron Meany represents Paul, Saint Paul? Are you getting this now? Saint Paul Meany. St. Paul and Minneapolis are twin cities on opposite sides of the Mississippi River, joined by a bridge. I said a bridge. The bridge was built in 1967, the year that we fasted and prayed about, 40 years ago. The year that we fasted and prayed about going into 07. The 2007 is the 40th anniversary of the Summer of Love, and some really strong strongholds got started in 1967, and the Lord's breaking down some things that were put up in 1967. And it's a mystery to the engineers how a bridge can stand 40 years and fall in 20 seconds. Well, it fell, and it fell into the river, the Mississippi River. St. Paul, Minneapolis. Chuck Pierce prophesied 2 weeks before Hurricane Katrina that an awakening wind would come to the headwaters of the Mississippi and a purifying wind to the end, that is the mouth of the Mississippi. 2 weeks later, Katrina came. Katrina means purity. The purifying wind came to New Orleans. Now we have an awakening at the headwaters of the Mississippi, which is Minnesota. Now, I'm going to try to describe something else to you. I don't want to be apologetic. I have been a lot of times. It's kind of probably a stronghold with me. But this is big about these highways. There was a couple prophecies recently. Cindy Jacobs and I think Chuck Pierce said, watch the highways, watch the highways. Highway 281 begins on the south border of Texas, right down on the Mexico line. It comes due north, coming up north. Well, not too far west of there, I-35 begins on the Mexican border and heads north. Okay, Highway 281 goes up, maybe the Highway 281, the Highway of Holiness, goes up maybe 100 miles, merges into I-37. I-37 is a very short interstate. Pretty soon right there in San Antonio, 37 merges into 35 and 37 ceases to be. In a sense, the Highway of Holiness, if you want to claim it all, is I-37 and I-35. But well, let me tell you, let me read you this. I-35, as far as I know, Isaiah is the only book in the Bible that starts with I. I-35 then might be interesting that in Isaiah 35 it talked about Verse 8, and a highway will be there, it will be called the way of holiness. The unclean will not journey on it, it will be for those who walk in that way, and wicked fools will not go about on it. Maybe a bridge being built in 1967, and it's the highway of holiness. Maybe this is all tied together. It sure sounds like it to me. Something here about St. Paul and many. I don't know. But I do know something else. This may sound a little obscure, but without too much further apology, y'all know about 273. If you've listened to the first part of this tape. Well, back 273 was started being revealed in 95. Well, back about 1998, I was reading the 14th chapter of Genesis. The 14th chapter of Genesis, it talks about Abraham taking his little army of 318 men and going to rescue Lot. Well, they went and rescued Lot, and he also rescued the Sodomites. Now, there's something in the scripture called the hardening of blessing that the Lord showed me in 1994. What it means is that if your heart is hard and you get blessed, then your heart just gets harder. A blessing becomes a curse. The Sodomites were taken off into captivity with Lot. It was a 5-4 decision. Actually, a 4-5 decision. 4 kings against 5, which sounds kind of like the Supreme Court. They were taken off into captivity with Lot, and then they were rescued by the grace of God without them having repented really in their heart. They were carried back to Sodom. The king of Sodom welcomed them, and I believe they had Mardi Gras. Now, they were already sinning greatly against the Lord, the scripture says. Their judgment was the hand of God and the mercy of God. Being taken off into exile is not the ultimate judgment. Being burned to ashes is the ultimate judgment. Scripture says that later Sodom was burned to ashes. Because when they were shown mercy of a mild judgment, they were broken. Instead of being broken, they were saying, let's go have Mardi Gras. Now, we believe that the Lord is saying that many were exiled from New Orleans, and then they went back and had Mardi Gras. Make no apologies. I believe the Lord's been saying that for some time. And He's saying it with this 318 thing. In fact, the Lord was saying this stuff to me, and I hadn't shared it with anybody about the 318 and the Sodomites being rescued, and then going to have a Mardi Gras. And the Lord was showing me this stuff. And then in one of our prophetic meetings, early on in the meeting, a guy looks up and says, I just saw the number 318. Does that mean anything to anybody? Well, it means something to me. And I told him, about what it meant. It meant about the hardening of blessing, and it meant about, I was talking about New Orleans, I believe, and the United States. The person said, well, now I heard the word Gedaliah. What does that mean? Well, I knew immediately that Gedaliah, when Nebuchadnezzar judged Jerusalem for God and carried them into exile, he did it relatively gently compared to what he could have done it. And he set a governor over them named Gedaliah and says, you guys be good and don't splash and don't make waves and work and farm and pay your taxes and everything will be okay. Well, they killed Gedaliah and stuffed him in the well. And then Nebuchadnezzar really judged him. So that was a double confirmation there, just bang, bang there in 10 minutes' time of 318 and Abraham's army of 318. Now, and Gedaliah. But also the history on this thing. In 1998, I read about the 318, and I asked, Lord, why is that 45 more than 273? And I said, I'm not going to look in a book and find out what 45 means. So, sometime later, after that, a guy was going on a trip with me, and he jumped in the car, and as soon as he got in the car, he said, I've been studying the angel of the Lord in the Bible, and how many times the angel of the Lord appears in the Bible. And guess what? The the angel of the Lord appears in the Bible 45 times. And I go, really? And so I believe that 318 represents the church with the angels of the Lord helping us. And so 318, part of the reason I'm bringing this up is when 281 merges with 37. When 281 merges with I-37, just before it pours into I-35, 281 plus 37 is 318. Okay? This has just happened, this thing about the 318, just like in the last month, about the 318 and Gedaliah. That was just recently. Now, the original revelation about 318 being 273 and 45 angels, that was back in 1998. But there's something about the highway of holiness, and there's something about a judgment that's coming, and a hard and a blessing, and people being judged and being shown mercy, and them not turning. As a matter of fact, this last Thursday night, in our prophetic prayer meeting, in my living room in our home, before we started the meeting, the guy says, I had a dream about 318 cattle and a food line where the hungry were being fed. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. And I grabbed my laptop, and we have cattle, and we have a ranch. We raise cattle for a living. And I don't know how many cattle I have at any one time, because this was on Thursday last week, which I think would have been the 2nd of August. On that previous Tuesday, we had had 4 slaughtered, and we'd had, I think, 3 born since that Tuesday, and I had to put them in, take them out on my laptop right quick and see how many I had, and guess what? I had 318 cattle. I don't know what's coming down from the United States of America, but I think there's going to be some food lines at a place at a time. It may not be this year, but I really think something is coming up in the next couple of months, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has something to do with New Orleans again. So, because of all of this. Now, let's see. Help me, Lord. I want to read Isaiah 35. The desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Like a crocus, it will burst into bloom. It will rejoice greatly and shout for joy. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, and the splendor of Carmel and Sharon, and they will see the glory of the Lord, the splendor of our God. Strengthen the feeble hands, and steady the knees that give way. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong. Do not fear. Your God will come. He will come with vengeance, with divine retribution, and He will come to save you at the same time. Then will the eyes of the blind be opened. Somebody say hallelujah.
Amen.
And the ears of the deaf unstopped, and then the lame will leap like a deer, and the mute tongue will shout for joy. Water will gush forth in the wilderness.
Cool.
And streams in the deserts, and the burning sand will become a pool, and the thirsty ground bubbling springs. In the haunts where the jackals once lay, grass and reeds and papyrus will grow. And a highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness, and the unclean will not journey on it. It will be for those who walk in that way. Wicked fools will not go about on it. No lion will be there, nor will any ferocious beast get up on it. They will not be found there, but only the redeemed will walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord will return, and they will enter under Zion, the singing and everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. So, praise God. God bless you. I don't know that this is the last of this series, but it is for this moment. Amen.